Hi everyone. So in this video, I'm going to talk about the interplay between three hormones that we actually talked a little bit about in the last video, which are FSH, follicle stimulating hormone, luteinizing hormone, LH, and gonadotropin um, releasing hormone, so GnRH, if I'm not wrong. Okay. So I'm a huge fan of the Brain Box book. However, there are certain things in the book that I strongly dislike, starting from this chapter onwards. And the first part of that is how insanely vague the book is in describing this system. Um, so the male hormone system, or what I mean by that is the hypothalamus, basically induces positive and negative feedback systems. So I'm not going to go too in depth about this because I've actually made a video on this before, but positive feedback basically means that, okay, let me make this a different color so it's easier to see and associate. Positive feedback systems are used to enhance a process or action. The best example I can think of this is labor. So, in labor, when the baby's head pushes against the cervix, there's oxytocin simulated that causes the uterus to contract further and allows the cervix to expand or open further. So, oxytocin causes more uterine contractions with a goal to expel the baby from the uterus. Another example I can think of is fruit and especially apples. I'm going to give a very over bird's eye view of this, but basically apples release a ripening chemical. I'm not fully sure what the name of the chemical is, but once the um, chemical is released, it causes all other apples to ripen and induces it in others as well. So basically, positive feedback loops encourage something to happen. The opposite of that are negative feedback loops, right? So negative feedback loops, which try to return something back to homeostasis. That's the best way I can put it. Return back to homeostasis. So the biggest example I can think of is temperature. So your body first has sensory receptors, which tell your body, so the thermoreceptors in your skin, telling your body that it's too hot. Then your hypothalamus sends signals to your sweat follicles. I'm kind of simplifying this. It's a little bit more complicated than this, but basically it causes you to sweat, right? So when you sweat, you expel extra moisture and the heat alongside it, and then it brings it back to normal temp, right? So for comparison, positive feedback loops push your body out of homeostasis. Negative feedback loops bring them back into homeostasis. That's my tip to think about it. I suggest you watch some other videos and my previous video on positive and negative feedback loops because I give you more specific and more concrete examples. So this is just an overview, but let's get into the actual content of the video. So first, let's go over the different hormones and their function, right? So F, follicle stimulating hormone, right? So FSH, we abbreviate as FSH, works to basically stimulate the release of sperm. All right, so FSH causes the release of sperm. Then you have luteinizing hormone, luteinizing hormone, LH, right? And this stimulates the production of testosterone. All right, so it stimulates testosterone production. Then this last part is gonadotropin releasing hormone. I'm not writing that. Sorry, guys. But you guys got that. Um, what gonadotropin hormone does is it actually initiates this whole cycle. And so first let's talk about the cycle, right? The hypothalamus will release GnRH, which stimulates the anterior pituitary to release FSH and LH. So obviously FSH will go to Sertoli cells, which are kind of like precursor cells for sperm, right? Sperm precursors. And these sperm precursors will start spermatogenesis, which is basically a maturing cycle where it goes from baby sperm to actual mature adult sperm. And as soon as it does that, there will be a hormone known as inhibin, which should sound familiar to you as inhibit, right? You should hear inhibit in that, which means to stop. So it induces a negative feedback loop to stop the anterior pituitary from producing FSH altogether. Not altogether. I mean, it stops, reduces the production. While that's also happening, it releases LH as well, which goes to the Leydig cells in your testes and produces testosterone, right? So once testosterone is released, it immediately exerts a negative feedback loop on LH, just as inhibit causes a negative feedback loop on FSH. Then these all together, the testosterone will go back and also put a negative feedback loop on GnRH to reduce the production of GnRH and thus stop the cycle. So basically, what this does is every day for 90 minutes, right? Every 90 minutes, FSH and LH work together to kind of cause a fluctuating cycle of GnRH, all right, which peaks every 90 minutes. So this is my wonderful drawing of GnRH release. So you can kind of see how every 90 minutes testosterone peaks in males. These happen. I'm going to write that in a different color just because it's that important, right? So these peaks occur every 90 minutes. And basically, what you need to know in this cycle is that the only thing that Brain Facts says you need to know is that FSH and LH work together to create a pulsing cycle of GnRH release, which causes testosterone peaking. So I'm sorry, I believe I said GnRH peaks every 90 minutes. That's incorrect. It's testosterone that peaks every 90 minutes. Cause testosterone peaks every 90 minutes. So this regulates the cycle, and the main function of this is regular testosterone and sperm production. This is super important because males produce sperms every single day, which is very different than what females do. Females actually have all of their eggs ready to go when they are born. Oops, sorry. Um, and why that's so important is because they have it already, but men don't. And that's why they need every 90 minutes for their hormones to peak 90 minutes, right? And I don't know, that opens up a wide variety of questions. Maybe that explains fundamental behavioral differences, why men tend to be a little bit more sporadic, or why men tend to make more on their feet decisions, why they tend to be stronger, a whole variety of questions that come up there. But that's the basic explanation. It's really important that you understand how these negative and positive feedback loops work because it kind of allows you to see why it peaks every 90 minutes and how it stops, how it's constantly pushing itself. It's opening it and capping it, opening it and capping it. Maybe you guys have seen those sprinkler systems, which basically will the caps will go in and out, in and out, in and out, stopping the flow and then opening, stopping and opening. It's kind of similar to that. And I think it's just absolutely fascinating how our body has come up with systems that regulate things like this. So this is what you basically need to know for this video. The next video is going to be significantly longer. So bear with me here because women's are 10 times more complicated than the men's system. Thank you for watching, everyone. Bye.